I had like really to take a deep moment with myself and say like, you know what, man, like I'm pouring so much energy into these people who don't reciprocate it back to me. I'm thankful for the healthy relationships I had with like you guys and like my personal life. I'm putting like half the amount of energy into these people and I'm getting more back. That's healthy. Like every day shouldn't have to feel like a battle for your love and affection.
We're having a first time, dude. First of all, Marines having Marines on here, man, is one of the coolest things I get to. One of the coolest added parts of my career out of the Marine Corps is having other Marines present, and long time coming. We should have had you on a long time ago. Armando Vega, welcome on.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Dude, it's been so since this last event, right? We just had the Marine Corps event, the birthday, and this is the second year of it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Also, congratulations on you like doing that, man. That's sick.
Man, if it wasn't for the closeness that we all of us that I feel with you guys, I don't know that it would have been happening. It's just that we were such a tight-knit group that, and this is something I've talked about with the other guys extensively, is we were such a tight-knit group. And I used to think that we were that this was common because you hear it, you know, you see countless accounts of because we're not the only account that has Marines get together. I mean, we're just one of thousands that get together. In fact, I didn't know how many groups get together until I created the annual mandatory fun day events. There's so many of them. I didn't know how many like actually get together. So for me, right, seeing all these events, and I'm just like, oh, you know, like they must all be super close, and I'm sure they are. But I realized once we got together, and after this last event, I mentioned this to you guys on the group chat, that our guest of honor, who's an Iraq War veteran, and you know he's I think the only generation, the last generation that really got to be in any sort of conflict. It got to see it at like its peak. And so he's from that a generation of Marines that went to saw some of the, you know, the craziest experiences, saw some friends, you know, go and never come back. And so that generation, like I always looked at with a, I don't know, like a lens of like, I don't know, like what's the word? Like I look up to them, like wow, look at what they went through.
Yeah.
And we, fortunately for us, we didn't have to go through that. Like we experienced all that stuff winding down.
For sure, yeah.
So realistically, we landed in a pretty lucky era.
Yeah. I actually, funny enough, I always say this is like whenever people ask me like when I went in or if I like went overseas or anything like that, I always tell them like the time that I went in was like super interesting because that's like when everything was winding down and we got to like have leadership who was like had combat experience, had been overseas, and like honestly, I think we had some like you know how they say like the greatest generation was like, you know, veterans from World War II and stuff like that. I honestly think like we had the greatest generation, not necessarily like ours specifically, but like the ones before that. So like some of those FNCOs that we had, like who had deployed, who had seen like, you know, like had actually been in combat situations. I think that they were like kind of unique in the sense that they could provide like, I would say like a really interesting perspective, and like also they were young enough to know like, hey, this is the things that we're going through as well. And like they honestly like there was some leadership that like when we had in like, you know, while we were in that, you know, doesn't like address that model, but like a lot of the staff NCOs that we had relationships with, I think were from that generation, and they were like super great leaders. And I think that we got super lucky, and especially like that compliment he paid us where he's like, yo, you guys are like super tight. That's like, honestly, that's just speaking for regards to like how close we were back in the day.
Exactly. So to add to that point, so that to finish that story, the guest of honor, he stuck around to all the way to the end of the event. I don't know. You checked out maybe. Oh, you didn't even see the thing we had after. Let me tell you about that.
Okay.
So when after you left, I think you might have left around 10?
Yeah, like 10:30.
10:30. Yeah. And so then after that, he told the story. So I had asked him to bring a one of his, I guess, like souvenirs of that conflict, and basically it was handguards. So he got shot, and his handguards stopped the round, and so he told the story. That's something you missed that
What?
when you left.
I
Yeah.
was like,
So he didn't want to do it, by the way. He didn't want to tell it, and he didn't want to bring it either. I asked him to. The only reason why I knew about it was because we used to work together. And one time I went to I like dropped him off at his house. Like something happened with his car. I don't remember. He was having some sort of issue, so I dropped him off at his house. He goes, "Hey, like let me show you something." So I go and he shows me the handguards. I'm like, what is this? He tells me the whole story. So basically what happened is he said that he was just like, they were messing around. Like they would have gotten in trouble basically, like, cause they were like messing with the weapon. They were kind of hanging it low to the dirt and whatever. Yeah. And like being stupid. And he said like, and then the sniper shot at him and hit his handguard. He said, had I been a good Marine and like had it like where you're supposed to and carry it properly, he said it would have hit my, like it would have hit like his leg, like his thigh, and probably could have hit a carotid. Or one of the which one?
Femoral artery.
Femoral. I'm sorry. Yeah, femoral. A femoral artery, and that would have been it. You know. So that him, like he said, him messing. That lesson was like just be yourself. Was that lesson from that? Was if he would have been like trying to be like everybody else and be super proper all the time and all that. He said that he would have that round would have hit his leg, and likely could have been bad. So he told that story and. It was just like everyone gathered around. We brought everybody over, and he told the story. And Thompson, one of our former leaders, he asked, what for Marines that haven't ever been in a firefight, what is your advice to them when rounds start coming down? What do you do? And he said, honestly, rely on your training. He said, ask questions later, like. You rely on how you've been trained and fall back on that. And it makes sense because when adrenaline hits, you forget all other like super formal procedures and you just default to your reflexes. And if your reflexes aren't your training, then that's why they always say like train how you fight, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And that's something that he also said and I was like, yeah, I mean, obvious, duh, right? Once you hear that, but it's like, yeah, of course, like there isn't like this. I guess we were expecting, because everybody was a little bit surprised. I think everybody was expecting like this profound, like, oh yeah, do this specific thing, do that specific thing, and it's like, there's no time for that. Like you don't have the luxury to get into this formation and do this and return fire and like this cool movie setup scenario. Yeah, sure, yeah. It wasn't that. He made it super clear that it's like just rely on, like don't ask questions later, rely on your training in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like I can relate to that so much just because obviously being like having had an MMA career, like getting ready for fights. Yeah, rely on your training, rely on the stuff that like you're gonna default back when that adrenaline hits. And that's honestly some of the realest advice, because eventually at the end of the day, like if you are in a situation where like, hey, it's either make it or break it. Yeah. You rely on the things you do and hope you trained well enough to ideally, make it out of that situation. And yeah. And that's like, and that's really it. And that's kind of like funny too, because especially like, everyone thinking like a profound answer. I always feel like they're like, especially for situations like that where, adrenaline's kicking in, you're like, stressed out, whatever the case being, whether it's professionally or in a combat zone. Like there's no straight answer you can give somebody to be like, hey, how do I prepare for this? Mm-hmm. The only thing you could say is, hey, like just rely on that training and do what you got to do, like to make sure that you can do that or you can effectively do those things. And yeah, honestly, that's like some of the realest advice I think like you could really give in those situations.
Dude, and so anyway, I keep skipping past like the main thing that he said, and right, which by the way, super cool story. But the reason why it was such a compliment was after the fact, he said that I asked him like, hey, are you home? Right? Like I checked in with, are you home? Did you make it home? And he's like, yeah. And then he said, you had a really cool platoon. And he said that he went further. I didn't tell you guys this part. He went further. He said, you guys had a pretty cool platoon. He said, I felt like I could just talk to them. Which is, by the way, like that's why we keep having these events. That's why we keep getting together. That's why we keep hanging out, still in chats. We don't have no responsibility to each other anymore. And in fact, a lot of Marines that I know that, especially like active duty, for example, they are all over the country. They are from all over the country, and with us in as reservists, we got to all be, once we got out, we all live local, so we don't go all over and some guys did, by the way, but because we were not only from like this local area, but also we had a unique setup where all of us came in at the same time, pretty much, like within a year of each other. Within that first year, I would say from early 2016 to all the way to like early 2017, and then once that group had formed. Some guys came in a little bit after, but for the most part, the main group was there. And so we got to grow up together, realistically.
Yeah.
And since we got to have that, now correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like to me, like we looked at our leadership, and we had some, like you mentioned, some good leaders, but as we got older, it seemed to get more and more, or less and less good. The leadership, it was less about us, more about themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Honestly, that group from like 2015 to like, I say it's 2015 because that's when I feel like I met you for the first time, and I had met like in this case,
it was 2016 when we met.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, dude.
Yeah.
My time of perception is just like,
yeah, it was, well, no, it was early 2016
Yeah.
when just about everybody showed up, so it's close.
Okay, yeah, 2016 then. I always say that like that group from like 2016 to like 2017, like that was the squad. Like that's when we like had all of the guys come together, and like honestly, there was some moments where it just feels like a movie in the back of my head where I'm like it's just kind of like, shooting, like, basically kind of just like hanging out in the chop and like just basically like chopping it up like a lot of those times. So yeah, that group where we were kind of like together and like formed up, and yeah, like those first beginning years really were like, just honestly, we had great leadership, and then like it slowly kind of like that, like the what's the word I'm looking for, but like the vibe of the unit changed at like as we kind of like started pushing towards the later parts of our careers, and it kind of started becoming more of like, at first it was always like, hey, we're like radio operators, we're good to go, like we want to make sure that comms up all the time, and like that was really what was important, and like actual like Marine development. And towards the later of it kind of like I got more like I would say bureaucratic, where like a lot of the stuff that the unit was focused on was like looking good on paper, and a lot of that was not necessarily good for, I would say, good for unit morale. Like,
yeah,
there was a lot of times where I'm like, okay, this like doesn't make any sense, or like, why are we doing this?
Right.
Why, like, we're Marines, let's train, like, let's go do stuff.
I got the sense that our leadership, as it began to change, began to look at us as like not as competent as they wanted us to be, but that wasn't true. Like they just didn't know. They weren't there with us. They would just look what would happen on paper, and it's like, oh well, this mission didn't like we did not talk to each other, so there was no investigation as to why things went wrong. Because a lot of the times we got radio up because it was between us and our sister unit a lot in California.
Yeah. And
so we would set everything up. Our side would be good. We would be waiting on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then we eventually figured out their phone numbers from that side.
Yeah.
We eventually got in contact with their leadership, and so we were able to like talk to them directly when they were having trouble, because I think they were very much understaffed with competent radio operators on that side. And I don't think that that's anything that was their fault, but it did create that issue where when we would go on field ops together, we would do field ops together. Oh well, we didn't complete this part, but it wasn't because we were incompetent. It wasn't because we weren't ready. It was because there was an issue with the other end. And obviously we want to look at the bigger picture, but from our leadership's perspective, they should have also been looking at us too and figuring out, well, what part did you play in that? Because that matters.
Yeah.
So that was my perception, was that there was just a lot of you were looking at it from up there, but you're from our shop, so all you had to do is come out and ask us questions. But that, I didn't see that level of engagement as we came up, right? And I think that's what began to change at least my goal. I'll speak about me. Like, my goal was, I want to get up there so that we can be a unit that is close as we were growing up together, and that the next group of guys that come in here don't feel like they need to earn the right to be here because they already did. Like, for me, when I first checked into the unit, you might remember a couple of the guys that were there before us, before even me. They were very much standoffish. They were very like, I don't like, they would talk down to you. That's the experience I had with the group that wasn't ours. The Lance Corporals that were there before us. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. And they would, they had this mentality of like, you need to earn your place here first. And that's what I hated about it when I first had checked in, was that. And when we came in, that's what we changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I would very much agree, like, especially when we first got in. I got super lucky that, like, when I transitioned into the radio side, I found a mentor super quickly and was able to, like, just pick stuff up and, like, immediately start learning. And that's, like, what I was assumed, like, for example, do you remember back when we were, like, checking into the unit, they would bring us in front of the whole platoon and just kind of, like, say, hey, state your name, say what you want to do, blah, 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 right? The first thing I literally said to the unit, and I remember, like, even, like, looking at a lot of our senior NCOs at the time, or, like, our senior Lance Corporals, I was like, hey, man, my name is Vega. I don't know anything. I just want to sit back and learn. And ultimately that meant more or less, like, yeah, I want to learn the radio side, but I also want to learn, I want to learn the vibe of the unit. Like, I want to know, like, what's cool, like, what can we do, or, like, you know, hey, what's how do we communicate, or, like, how do I interact with, like, my senior Marines? Like, how do I become, like, an actual, like, I don't want to say, like, fleet Marine. I want to know what's because at that point we, like, you know, we obviously came out of, like, boot camp, went to MCT, and then went to the schoolhouse, and, like, there was still a lot of, like, formalities and stuff like that. And, like, now that we're, like, in our shop and we're with the guys that we're supposed to be, like, you know, family with, I want to learn how to, like, get to know you guys. Like, and that's one of the few things that I just feel like a lot of those, like, senior, like, you know, those, like, corporals and, like, senior Lance Corporals kind of just didn't really do well, where it was kind of very much like, I'm your senior, I get to tell you what to do, you better just listen.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and it's like, I never felt comfortable, like, going up to some of these corporals and being like, hey, I have a question, like, how does this work? Or, like, if I had a question on a task they wanted me to do, I never really felt comfortable enough to be like, hey, like, like, I need some help with this, like, what do you want me to do? And a lot of the times I never really felt that. And, like, us, like, getting out and, like, going towards, like, the end of our careers, I felt like we had, like boots coming up to us, and, like, they never had an issue, like, asking us questions, or, like, for example, like, that last radio op, or, like, that last field op that we went on, like, we had, I think, like, Benz was on our like, team, and Benz was, like, by my side, looking over my shoulder, asking me questions. I myself am not a very good teacher by any means, and, like, I'm sure you remember, like, whenever, like, radio needed to be up, I'd be like, nope, I gotta do it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I feel like a lot of the things that we changed is that, like, our, like, juniors can come up to us and, like, watch us do work and ask us questions, and we're not gonna be like, just get away. But no, like, we'll answer questions and we'll, like, help them out and, like, actually, like, give them skills to become good Marines. And, like, that's something that I, like, think we, like, our team, or, like, our, like, generation changed, and I, like, love that, because honestly, like, now looking at some of our juniors that, like, at this event, I'm seeing, like, oh, dude, you guys are stacked up. Like, Gomez is, like, I, like, saw Gomez's rack, and I was like, dude, you deployed, you did that, and, like, yo, you're, like, honestly, dude, I'm, like, I couldn't be prouder, because I'm, like, it feels like watching my little brother grow up, and, like, I get to see him doing big things, and, like, that's awesome to me.
Yeah.
So, and, like, I think that's something that we did, like, our generation changed, and I love that, and I would definitely agree that, like, that's something that's awesome.
Speaking of Gomez, he mentioned, he actually said this directly, speaking on your point, which is that, like, that we did have that effect on the next generation, because he told me that when the new guys came in, what they do now is they have, like, they get together after their first drill, and then they go out with them. Yeah. And they go, hey, like, you know, we're all friends, like, if you have any questions or you're not sure about something, reach out, like that type of thing, which is something that our group pushed really hard to change. And I'm just glad to see that at minimum, maybe they don't remember our names, maybe they don't remember who we were, but they remember the way that we kind of put our, I guess, like our signature on that group was by changing that small thing that makes a big impact. Who knows how many generations this will affect, right? Like the next, they were so, like, for example, Gomez was really liked our dynamic so much that he went and tried to recreate that in the new generation that came in. And the hope is that if he does that, and then the new guys come in, they really like being there, at least with each other, then that is something that will change the way that they operate together. Because I think, like, we talked a lot about like how we didn't really get to deploy or see any of that. I think what happens is now people just imagine what combat would be like. And so a lot of these leaders, these junior Marines they were our senior Lance Corporals, as you say, our senior Lance Corporals, they were part of that generation that didn't really get to see all that. And so then they just have to imagine what it's supposed to be like. And so their perception of good leaders is just these unrelenting, basically drill instructor mentality. And the thing is, like, that comes from a lack of, like, maturity. Like, lack of experience.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know how that actually plays out yet. And our group saw them make that mistake, right? Like, we saw them and go, that doesn't work. Like, we hate it that way. We hate being a part of this, because it's like that. And that was one of the things that again, I'll beat a dead horse with it. It's just that it's such a cool thing to see change. But before we get too much further, I do want to ask, though, one of the things that I've noticed that I had noticed about you just said it a little bit earlier about how you wanted to just do it yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
And that had that was both good, and then also had its downsides for me, even because, like, I became dependent on your knowledge of radio, so much so that, like, before you had checked in, I had to start getting on the radio, but I wouldn't say that I was super proficient until you came in, and until after you came in, actually, and you kind of took the reins and you just knew it. Like, you just knew the radio. Like, there wasn't anything we had to tell you. And so you would just, your own anxiety would just take over. And anytime anybody wanted to touch the radio, we'd just be like, tell Vega to do it. And if you weren't there for whatever reason, you were at a different site, like, if you weren't a part of that group, there would be like we would figure out a way to get in contact with you. Yeah. Even after your time in the unit, you would be at work and we would call you and be like, hey, we need help. And what did you do? You had your notes right on in your vehicle, in your work vehicle, your civilian job. You had your radio notes. You're like, let me go grab them. And you just, like, walk us through the setup process. And so I just want to ask, man, like, where does that come from? Where does that mentality, like, is that something that would you consider yourself an anxious person?
Oh, absolutely, man. Like, I'm such an anxious person. And, like, the Marine Corps, like, helped that and didn't help it at the same time. Because, like, I've already naturally always been competitive. Like, I always want to be good at everything that I do. And being a Marine, like, kind of, like, instilled that even more. Because, like, I don't know if you ever feel like this, but, like, whenever you're, like, in the room with a Marine, or, like, you're, like, with a Marine, it's like, okay, hey, like, I'm taking charge. Like, I want to make sure that, like, we're all good. Like, I don't know if you ever get that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And more or less, like, the more I stood in our unit, and, like, also, not gonna lie, there was a lot of our senior Lance Corporals that, like, would, like, especially, like, in certain field operations, would be like, what do we do here? And not gonna lie, to me, that was the most irritating thing. So I'm like, I'd look at some of these senior Lance Corporals, I'm like, dude, you've been doing this way longer. Like, why don't you know this?
Yeah. And
so I remember, like, obviously there was, like, Corporal Eads, and you joke about this all the time, bro. Like, he hates me. I was like, but, like, and I feel like that, like, there was that reason because, like, honestly, like, I saw this and I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me go to the most proficient radio operator here, which was Corporal Eads at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, I need to learn this. Like, let me figure that out. And, like, honestly, like, my whole thing is like, I wanted to get good at my job so that pretty much, like, hey, I don't want to fail. I don't want to get, like, And in that point, there was very much that mentality of like, you get chewed out if you mess something up, and I don't want to get chewed out. Like that's not what I want to do. So it instantly became like, yo, I don't want to get like yelled at, because I like, to me personally, like my anxiety builds up with that happening, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want that. Like I'm gonna figure this out, and like also I don't want to see my friends getting chewed out either.
Yeah.
Like especially if it's like something that I did. Like going back to it again, like the same thing that happened in that field op in California. I was like,
man, I have to tell you. Well, first of all, I'll tell my side, and then I'll hear your side.
Okay, for sure.
So let me just. Most of the time, I'm joking. By the way, I know I beat you up a lot about it, but
no, dude, honestly, like that's like I think one of my like. With you, we've had so many of those moments where my anxiety has led to some of like your greatest crash outs. Like, I love that.
So what's funny is let's talk about how that collides, because I'm an anxious person too. So, but my anxiety comes out a little bit different than yours. My anxiety is more in bringing unnecessary attention, and I know that that's what you are trying to avoid. The only thing, like. We'll talk about the cold weather op that we were on together too, because that's one of the, you guys mentioned, like one of my greatest crash outs. McGee will talk to death about that.
Oh my God.
Because he was there, right? He got to see me like lose my mind. And there are two things I hate. I hate the cold. So I'm terrible in the cold. It's just, even when I was working at Dish and I had to work outside, I mean, that's the stuff that makes you think about quitting. Oh. Is just being out in the cold. Your hands are free, your feet, you can't feel your toes. Like that's the stuff that will drive me through a wall. So I hate the cold, and I hate unnecessary attention. And so when we were on for example, you just mentioned the field op. We were in California, and what had happened was that something that was entirely not our fault happened, where we were supposed to be helping another unit.
Yeah.
And we were there as support. That was specifically why we were there. It was something that our unit talked about, and when we got there, that was what we were briefed about. Was we were there to support the unit in California, and so then it was our sister unit, right? Or was it?
No, yeah, it was still our unit.
Comm Squadron, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was still Comm Squadron, but it was like the Miramar side.
Gotcha. So then we were there to assist them, and so then we get there. Most of the unit is gone. They deployed. And all they left us with was one PFC that just checked into the unit like earlier that week. That's all we had, right? And that all the equipment that they had there was all broken stuff that they deemed not worthy of bringing on a deployment. And then we had to sort through all their garbage, right? So we had a bunch of batteries that were not charging. We had a bunch of we didn't even have an OE antenna.
Yeah, no, we were this is one of the few things that I love about Marine Ingenuity as well. This is like a little side comment, but I remember like that field op, we were like trying to figure out like how can we like get these antennas up, and I just remember Benz at the time was like, yo, you know what, this would be a great idea. We duct taped the radio to the back of the 7-ton and like just created the antenna, and then like figured out how to
slash wire.
Yeah,
we made it out of we had one of our leaders that was there on, because we were on the we were forward.
Yeah, we were like, I guess it's a forward air refueling station.
Yeah, and so we went out there while main side, some of our guys, our leadership stayed over there, and one of our leaders was like, hey, he told us about the sloping V, and so we're like, all right. So then we grab the slash wire, and we do from the 7th, like you mentioned.
Yeah, from the 7th.
From the top of the 7-ton driver's side, and then it's sloping V with slash wire, right? And so we got it to work. Like that's the crazy part.
Yeah,
we had positive radio checks, and it was over a mountain. We were shooting over a mountain.
Yeah,
and we still got a radio check on it. Granted, it was like very.
It's pretty sketch, but
like it was a weak connection, but it was a connection, and we could hear them. And so then, anyway, there's a lot of pressure on the op, and it clearly became us having to take over and do the entire op. We didn't have any support. It was just us. So realistically, it was us being entirely in charge of communication side. And that kind of sucked for us because it wasn't our equipment. We weren't properly equipped. And the equipment we did have was barely working. And so then we had to be supplying radios like the
Prick 152s.
Prick 152s, which are the handheld radios, and we had to hand them to a bunch of guys that were talking to the air crew. And then the fuelers were talking to each other, and they were talking to us, and so everybody was talking to each other. And those radio batteries were like super essential for that. And so they kept coming to us, right? The battery would die, we would throw them back on the charger, and then 30 minutes later, another guy would come in, new battery. We're like, dude, like I don't know how we're doing it, but we're doing it, right? We're getting it. We're staying. We stabilized it. But then main side at night, we stopped getting communication, and we're trying to figure out what's happening. We think something's going on with the weather. We think it's such a weak connection that like something's going on. And we're trying to think why we're not hearing anything. And that a gunnery sergeant calls us over the phone and goes, like, I don't care what it takes. You guys are going to stay up all night. And every hour on the hour, you're going to do radio communications. And I tried to explain to him that we have a weak connection. So I don't know that we can guarantee every hour on the hour. We got positive comms, but we don't know how if that connection will be sustainable. And he went off. He said, he's like, you listen to me, Marine. He's like, if I don't have tomorrow, if I come in here and I don't see a log every hour on the hour that you guys have been talking to each other, you're going to see me tomorrow. I was like, all right. Well, I guess whatever I say doesn't matter. So anyway, we go through all this mess of us having to make sure we're trying to talk. I mentioned that my concern was, this is what it was. I mentioned my concern that there had been a call about rattlesnakes in the area.
Yeah.
That was one of my concerns, and we didn't have any lights. And I was like, we don't even have chem lights out here. We're supposed to have chem lights. And he said he didn't like. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I tried to tell him that this is a training exercise. Like, we should proceed with caution because we're trying to. This isn't go time. Like, I wouldn't put the Marines in that kind of risk because I had just picked up corporal at the time, so I'm super serious about taking care of you guys. And I was like, I don't want my guys stepping around a field without any light when we've reported rattlesnakes in the area. Like, I don't want somebody stepping on a snake, because if somebody takes a snake bite and they die because of a radio check thing that we didn't even have the proper equipment for, like, that's the stuff that I would not be comfortable with. So anyway, didn't care. So he comes the next morning. Obviously, we didn't get radio check every hour on the hour. And we were like, dude, we were losing our minds trying to figure out how to get, like, why aren't we hearing from them? What's happening on that side? Like, and we tried calling them, like, through our actual phones, and they weren't answering. So it's like, what's happening? And the next day, sure enough, here he comes. Blasts us. And my part about you, the thing I give you crap about is that you and I were talking before all of this happened. You were like on the, if we were to look straight ahead, right? The left side is the driver's side and the right side is the passenger side. I was obviously in the back of the 7-ton, over like in the troop carrier area. And that's where all the comm gear was. And so then you were kind of on the ledge, on the back end of the ledge, and we were having conversations. And so then I hear, where's radio? And all of a sudden, I'm just saying, all of a sudden I look back over, you're not in that corner anymore, and I hear the door shut. I hear the driver's side door just and I'm like, oh, good. So then he comes over and he starts screaming at me. And obviously I'm trying to talk, like, wait for him to, like, stop saying whatever he's saying. He's screaming at us, he's saying that like, real Marines stay up and it doesn't matter, operation over everything, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And so he's screaming all that stuff at me, and I'm trying to, like, he's like, I told you the only thing you had to do was every hour on the hour, like, as if losing sleep after we've already been up from the entire previous day wasn't enough staying up. So he's, like, screaming that, like, real Marines stay awake during this stuff. And so anyway, I wait for him to finish all that, and I try to tell him we weren't asleep. And he's like, bullshit. He starts screaming at me. He's like, don't lie to me. It's like, if you do that one more time, like, I'm paperwork, blah, blah, blah. He's, like, screaming all this stuff anyway. And then that finishes up. By the way, Benz was in a class when this happens, which you say she wasn't, but I know because I saw her in the class, and I physically saw her sit up, look at me getting yelled at, and then run towards me. And so then she ran over, I think because she thought when he said, "Where's radio?" Like, she thought maybe nobody was watching the stuff. Like, nobody was there.
Yeah.
And so she came running, not knowing that I was already there getting yelled at. And so she shows up, and it was kind of awkward because she shows up, and then
she just immediately goes to parade rest.
It immediately goes to parade rest, and then not knowing, should I stay or should I just go? And so she was just she just waited for the storm to be over because she saw his attention was solely on me.
Yeah.
And so he was, he finishes his stuff and then he leaves. And I'm just saying that it's just kind of funny that once he vanishes, you reappear. Like, what happened? Like, all confused. Like, you didn't just hear me in the back seat, in the backside of the cargo van getting destroyed by this guy. And then, anyway, go for it. What was your side? What happened from your perspective?
All right, so my side was I was on radio watch when this happened. And I don't know if you remember, but like there was one time where, like, I guess sort of, because you remember how like during that site or while we were on that like forward op, essentially we had to like at one point set up the radio on the top of the like 7-ton.
Mm.
And we had set it up on the driver's side because we also kept killing the 7-ton because we had to leave it on or we had to leave stuff like plugged in all the time, and we kept killing it.
Yeah.
And so so we had set up our radio setup in the driver's side, and I was like, all right, cool. So and like when we were there, we were kind of like, I guess like you and I were talking, and then I remember the same thing. I'm like, where's radio? And I was like, oh great, this is hilarious. And I just see immediately this gunner sergeant walk up to you and just start blasting me. Like, I was just like, oh, that looks bad. I'm on radio watch, so I can't leave the air unattended.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna main site, this is I'm like, please come in over. And so I remember just here, and then I remember like distinctly, he's like, "You're Marines," and I was like, all right. First off, I felt for you because I was like, you know what, like that's some BS because we were up all night.
We were. That's the crazy part.
And I'm almost positive you have a picture of me climbing to the top of the 7-ton in my fucking,
You're good.
in my flip flops, and I was like, dude, we were like on top, and I remember finally we got a hold of, I believe it was like one of our guys on main side, and we're like, dude, what happened last night? Were you like not hearing us? And they were like, oh, well, like this certain Marine was on radio watch, and he had fallen asleep. And I was like, wait a minute. And also, come to find out, at that point too, we also found out that same gunnery sergeant wasn't even a radio gunnery sergeant. He was like supply or something.
Yeah.
Like, why do you care about comms? Like, dude, why? Like, what was the whole point of even blasting us?
So actually, he said it to me. He said that he had a captain in his ear, and that his priority was radio.
Really?
And so he was in his ear telling him to check up on us, and he didn't want to deal with him. So he pushed that on us to figure that out. And I tried to explain to him, he didn't want to hear it, that we don't have the gear we need. Like, we're operating off of literally spares, like spare parts, jerry-rigged radio.
Jerry-rigged's an understatement.
And we made that work. That's the craziest part. And that's where I really got annoyed with that unit, was because we did all this. We actually got comms up. And rather than saying, wow, look at how much you were able to do with almost nothing.
Yeah.
And they didn't even consider that and wouldn't even write up anybody for NAMs, because I think that's what should have been written up. Everybody who participated, me, you, Benz, and our leadership from main side should have all gotten NAMs for establishing comms with Slashwire, with stuff that isn't supposed to shoot that far. Like, it wasn't designed for that kind of range, and we shot it over a mountain and still got comms.
Yeah.
And this is just off of, by the way, like, this is us kind of like messing. Like, we didn't even have coordinates. Like, we just aimed and we thought, I think it's that way. Like, that's literally how we figured it out. We're like, I think like main side should be this way. So we like would move it, we would tweak it, try radio, tweak it, try like, radio check until we got to a point where we're like, oh, we got it here. And that stuff is what I think is worth recognition. But because they were so focused on stuff that, in my opinion, isn't priority, the priority is do they have the equipment they need?
Yeah.
That should have been the first thing he asked me was, hey, do you guys need everything? This is what this officer wants done, right? Do you guys have what you need to do that? Should have been the first question. Because then if that officer goes, why isn't radio working? There needs to be a solid explanation as to why that doesn't happen. And he wasn't willing to do that for us. All he cared about was putting it on somebody else. And that, to me, is the sign of a incompetent leader, an immature leader, in my opinion. So anyway, that's one of the examples. Another story is we went to cold weather training. And it was like -12. It was Fort McCoy. And it was, I don't know if it was a polar vortex or what was happening, but it was so cold. It was -12 all day. And so it was so cold that there's pictures of when we were kind of like marching to the gas chamber, because we also were doing gas chamber at -12 degrees for some reason. Yeah. So anyway, so then we're marching towards it, and then you see pictures of guys with like frost on their eyebrows and eyelashes. Anyway, we're supposed to be, again, assisting, not being the main unit there, and they don't know us for the most part. It's the first time meeting us, junior Marines. The seniors probably already knew some of the guys, but the juniors didn't. And so then we noticed that there's not a lot going on. Like, they're not moving anything. And so we just go, all right, well, we've been out here for however many hours. I can't even tell anymore. And I was like, my feet, like, I can't feel my toes. Can we go inside in a tent and warm up for a minute? And so you, me, and McGee, we all go find a tent. Like, literally like a minute in to us kind of warming back up. You're like, yeah, we should really go back out. And you kept saying they might be looking for us. I was like, who's they? Like, who's actually they? Because nobody really knows us here. Our leadership is busy somewhere else. It's just us here helping them, and they don't know us, and they're not doing anything. So who's looking for us? You're like, oh, they're going to be looking. And so finally, like, that's when I had snapped on you. I was like, you go find them then if somebody's looking for us. And when you find them, you tell me who's looking for us, because I need to know who's looking for us. And that's what you guys quote all the time, and I bring up too. It's just one of those memories that it's like just anxiety levels through the roof.
Yeah, and I think that's also kind of like one of those things where it's like you've been in the field for a couple days, you're kind of annoyed, like you don't have those luxuries that you have at home, and also on top of that, it was absolutely freezing. I think we were like missing certain gear, like we didn't have, like some of us didn't have snow boots, so like we were just chilling in our like rat boots that we had.
At some point, yeah, I think I don't remember now actually. We may have had the Mickey Mouse boots by then, but even then it was so cold that it didn't matter. I remember just no matter what we did, we had the wool socks, the super thick socks, all that stuff, and I still felt like it wasn't helping enough. Like, it was still so cold that it was getting right through them.
Yeah, no, that was a super cold. Like, funny enough, is I made it a point to, well, I will never go to the Upper Peninsula of Wisconsin ever again, because that's where Fort McCoy is. I was like, it is so cold up here. I am super good off that. I will never make my way up there again, because honestly, cold weather exercise was pretty cool. Like, I got to do some, I guess, like, whenever we were actually, like, busy and got to do some stuff, like, it was pretty cool. But, like, beyond that, yeah, no, dude, if I'm gonna sit in a radio tent and just get cold, I'm like, I'm super good. Especially, like, I don't know if you remember specifically, but, like, when we were in the radio tent that, like, they had set up, it was, like, super far away from, like, main camp, and, like, pretty much they were like, yo, there's too many bodies in here, we need to, like, get some people out. Mm-hmm. And there was, like, just, like, nobody there.
Right.
And, like, nobody, like, it was pretty much just all the reservists standing outside, and we're like, what are we doing? There was nothing. And, like, honestly, I remember that too, and it's so funny that you kind of, like, always bring that up too, because I remember, like, that was when I was a junior Marine, and because I think out of, like, our group, I was still one of the newer guys, because I think it was me, and then I think that's when, like, the newer, like, I guess, like, our juniors started coming in after. I think I was, like, the youngest, like, I was, like, the newer guy out of, like, you, me, and McGee, and Kano, even. And so I was like, dude, I don't want to, like, get leadership upset, or, like, I don't want to, make them mad at me or whatever. So I was like, maybe we should just go outside. And so, like, it's so funny to me. I was like, that was just me being a boot. And, like, and I just remember you being like so bad about it. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Like,
It's just that's where I was making the point earlier about the anxiety comes up in different ways. Like my thing was, if you go out there and you get us unnecessary attention and we have to go back out there and freeze unintentionally because of we weren't needed, that was like my complaint. But aside from that, right, I do want to get to your life outside of the military. So for example, like what was it like? Are you an only child?
No. Actually, it's kind of a yes and no question.
Okay.
I'm the only child for my mom.
Okay.
My dad has been married beforehand, so and I have a brother and a sister. But they're like just half siblings, but we grew up together. So I say yes, I had siblings growing up, but at the same time, like I didn't.
How much older than you were they?
Oh, my sister was already like 14.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was, and also on top of that, she didn't live with us full time.
Okay.
So it was pretty much just me around the house.
So you did have siblings, but for the most part, you lived like an only child.
Pretty much, yeah.
So then, what was childhood like for you? Was it lonely? Was it a childhood that you had a lot of friends in?
I was an awkward kid growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like also like I'm naturally an awkward guy.
Mm-hmm.
I very much am like somebody who's like, especially now as an adult, I'm like, if I'm not spoken to, I'm not gonna speak to you. And when I was younger, I had this idea that my dad's like an old school Cuban guy, so he like wanted me to be like this like, all about life kind of guy.
Right.
And so he would like always try to like push me to make friends and stuff like that. So I'd always be like, kind of like trying to be outgoing, but it's not really my thing. And so like that kind of definitely was like, it definitely took me a while to figure out that like, hey, I'm not the most outgoing person. That's okay. Like I don't need to be. Like I can just like sit back and like chill and like let people come to my vibe. And so growing up, and that kind of like leads into how I grew up, is like growing up I was like involved in a lot of sports and like martial arts and stuff like that. Like my dad had this like, my dad was like super big on me being involved in sports and martial arts, so like that's kind of where I socialized a lot, and like that's honestly where like a lot of my later in life like hobbies came into play, because like I love football and like I love martial arts obviously. So like growing up I was really into sports and like going into martial arts and stuff like that. And then I guess also growing up too, it was kind of like, I will say it did get lonely sometimes, because like at home it'd be me and my grandma, just because my parents worked all the time.
Right.
And like my grandma would be like, okay, cool, you do your thing and I'm just gonna like watch novelas.
Right.
Like,
typical grandma activity.
Yeah, grandma activities.
Latino grandma activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, so like, yeah, it was definitely lonely growing up, and like I would like try to go make friends, and like especially too, like I didn't live in like the greatest neighborhood,
right?
So like a lot of my friends were like outside, and like their parents didn't necessarily care as much, and my parents were like, hey, like don't do that, like don't go outside after like a certain time frame, or like if it's dark, don't do that. Like like they were also really big on like me being very like educated and like very like put a lot of effort into education. So there was a lot of times too where like a lot of the friends that I had like growing up, like we didn't really like, there wasn't like I wouldn't say there wasn't a connection, but like there was very much like different priorities. Like I'd be inside studying or like doing like tutoring or whatever,
right?
And my friends were like, yo, let's go play soccer, and I'm like, well, I can't because I have like this stuff to do. And and so yeah, like it definitely got lonely, and that kind of gave me anxiety, because like also at that point, like I sometimes like I felt like I what's the word? Like I felt like I did the most to like make sure I maintain these friendships, because like
you overcompensated for it.
Yeah, I've definitely overcompensated for sure, and like definitely that was what my childhood was like for sure, and that's what like I think like led to me having anxiety as an adult, because I was like overcompensating so much as a child to like make sure I maintained friendships, and making sure that I was like worthy to have them, because like a lot of the times, like, like when I was younger, like it was kind of lonely because like my parents worked all the time, so I didn't see them around, and when I did, it wasn't necessarily the most, I guess, like positive environment, because like Latino parents, like especially like this is something I think that's pretty prevalent amongst Latinos, is like you have some parents that like maybe should get a divorce but like don't, because
because there's like this thing, there's you don't leave like that. That's something that even my parents got divorced, and that was something that even still like leaked into my psyche of like you don't leave, and unless like you feel like your life is in danger or something like that. Other than that, like you don't leave. And that's what happens, unfortunately, is a lot of parents who probably shouldn't be together stay together, thinking that that's better for the kids. And I always say my parents' divorce wasn't the problem. The problem was how they handled it.
Yeah.
That was my complaint, was just that it was just complete. Because again, I don't know about you, but in my experience, Latino communities are big on big on resentment. So like once we're not friends anymore, once we're not married together, once we're not in a relationship, you don't exist. You're dead. Like that's the vibe that I grew up having about relationships, was that if they don't want to be with you anymore for whatever reason, it's like a betrayal, and so now you are not a good person anymore. And so that's the thing that got leached to me, that I wish that I think was wrong, because they resent the other person. Now I don't get a parent, and that's the downside of the divorce amongst, I think, in my experience, amongst Latino families, is when they do get divorced, there's this no contact thing. And I saw my dad once as a kid after they got split up, where like I actually got to come back after the divorce was finalized and get to see my dad one time. I was 12 and they split up when I was like 5 or 6. So you know what I'm saying? Like that is also the downside of that. But when they stay together, it's just that they shouldn't be together anymore. Like that's the problem, is they shouldn't be together anymore. And then don't forget about the kid, because the kid is the one who suffers. Like that's who pays for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that does suck that you probably had to, I'm assuming, experience fights at home. And
yeah, like that's the thing, is like, you know, there's the idea where like, yeah, just get a divorce, and then there's its own complications, like just getting a divorce.
Yeah.
But like there's also complications of like, oh, we're staying together, and like I'm resentful because I'm with you. And so like I saw a lot of that growing up, and I was just like, man, this is like not like, you know, even when I was younger, I'm like, because like for example, like this is like a thing, something that I tell like a lot of people, and like they think it's weird. But like, so for example, my parents were already, like when I was like growing up, they were already at the point where like we're not even sleeping together, we're like sitting in separate rooms.
Yeah.
And like I would always tell that to people, and they're like, that's so weird. And I'm like, I don't know, to me it's normal.
Right.
And I got used to it being normal, where like people are like vindictive towards each other, and like if you're not, and like I saw my dad, like again, my dad has his flaws, but he tries. He definitely does try, but he just doesn't do it well.
Well,
yeah. And I saw him try, and like I saw my mom, like obviously, like, you know, like she had her, you know, her issues as well, and so did my dad. And so I saw a lot of those fights where like people are trying to like overcompensate for things that aren't wrong, and like trying to make things better, and like that's where a lot of that anxiety of like overcompensation and trying to like be like
the peacekeeper.
Yeah, the peacekeeper essentially. And so like that was one of those things where like growing up, that's what I saw a lot of. And not gonna lie, because like also, and this kind of like leads back to like kind of like having a necessarily lonely childhood.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to be around each other, so like growing up for me, like we never had like family dinners. Like family dinners for us would be like I'd sit down with my grandma, have like dinner with her, and then my mom, who had just gotten home from work, is like, hey, I want to like watch TV and like eat my food. So she would go to her room, and then my dad, who was like, I just want to watch baseball, he'll go to the basement, watch baseball, and like eat his food down there. So like I never really like had the traditional like, hey, everyone got home from their day, let's like sit down for dinner. It would be kind of more like you just eat when you want. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my childhood was like too. And it wasn't weird. But seeing other families and other, like my friends, and they all eat together, I'm like,
that's like, what?
like
what?
This is a thing?
Yeah.
And yeah, it is weird. And I do want to ask too, how do you think that affected you in relationships?
Oh man. Definitely definitely because of that. I was in some relationships that were not the greatest. I won't go too deep into that just because like, you know, there are certain things that like, yeah, just, you know, adult stuff that you go through. But like, yeah, there's definitely certain relationships where I was like fighting to save it.
Yeah.
And like doing my absolute best. And actually, funny enough and this is something that I don't say enough, is that honestly, like, and this is kind of like goes back to the whole initial conversation of like how close we were, is I was going through something like absolutely horrible. And I was trying to save a relationship that just wasn't working. And it was so funny because like I felt like I had lost a lot of myself, and like honestly it was pretty prevalent to you guys around me. You're like, you guys would always ask me like, Vega, it's like something wrong.
Yeah.
like are you okay? And I remember it was so funny because on that same exercise you had asked me and said, hey, like let's go, like dude, like we talked about martial arts randomly because you were just starting to train at Victory, And you were like, yeah, you were like, I think you were going back and forth with the staff sergeant talking about how like McMap is not efficient.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember you stood on business with this guy.
He was a drill instructor.
Yeah.
And he was like I think he was a black belt in McMap, and he used to he was like talking about, he overheard I think our conversation about it, and then he was like, and I was telling you, that's what it was. I was telling you that like how McMap just would never hold up against a true like mixed martial artist, and then he overheard that, and he was like, well, I don't believe, like, he didn't say I didn't believe it, but he was like kind of pushing back a little bit.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, no, I don't think that's he's like, there's plenty of things, I think he said in McMap as you advance in the belts, is what he said.
Yeah.
That is more realistic and could hold up. And I told him like, no, even like a black belt would still never hold up against a true mixed martial artist, because a mixed martial artist doesn't rely on you being in certain positions, in which McMap is heavy on up until the late belts.
Yeah.
About like being in specific positions. And if you don't train it all the time, which in McMap you don't, mixed martial artists are training every day for the most part. And so that's where the differences are just not comparable. And in the curriculum of McMap, you don't see a lot of striking. Mixed martial artists strike too.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, it wasn't a real argument. So anyway, back to your part of that.
Yeah. No, but like nonetheless, like I was going through some stuff at the time, and like this was because of a relationship that I was like trying to overcompensate for and stuff like that. And like honestly, dude, there was like that moment where like I remember like you got me into martial arts, and like honestly, dude, it kind of saved my life, because I was going through a weird time, and like I didn't really know what could have ended out of that. And like that, going back, I guess like kind of like to bring this story full circle, is that yeah, man, like the way that like my childhood kind of like led into my relationships now, like I definitely tried to overcompensate, and like I felt like I had to like pour all my attention into a relationship, and sometimes that's not the healthiest.
No,
yeah, so it definitely created a lot of like scenarios where relationships weren't healthy for me for a very long time. And honestly, I say that with a grain of salt, where like I didn't start realizing this until I was in my later 20s. Like
same.
Yeah, I was like, man, I'm like, I felt so like I had been through a relationship. I had like, especially after that kind of situation, I had like really to take a deep moment with myself and say like, you know what, man, like I'm pouring so much energy into these people who don't reciprocate it back to me. And like I did, and actually, and you know, I'm thankful for the healthy relationships I had with like you guys and like my personal life, where I was able to learn like, listen, I'm putting like half the amount of energy into these people, and I'm getting more back. And like that's healthy. Like like I shouldn't have to like every day shouldn't have to feel like a battle for your love and affection. And not gonna lie, up until that point where like I was seeking relationships that it felt like a battle.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not healthy, and like honestly, that's not something that's sustainable. And I had to really take a step back and like relearn how to communicate effectively, how to, if I have a problem, like, hey, I got to speak up and talk about it.
Yeah.
Or like, that's, yeah, kind of just more or less that, like, kind of just relearn how to like communicate. And like, that's something that like I guess it really goes back to, because essentially what you can kind of like look at a lot of like Latino like relationships, and like a lot of our, you know, situations with our parents and stuff like that. Like a lot of times, if they just communicated a little bit more efficiently, a lot of our issues would be gone. Like,
yeah, communication is a big problem. Yeah. Specifically, you mentioned something that's like super similar to me, and we have like about like 5 to 6 minutes before we run out of time. So I just want to make sure this just for the cameras. Sure. So I just want to kind of give you a time estimate, but I do think it's important that we mention that the similarities here are pretty crazy of what you're saying. Similar in my experiences with relationships too. It's like it's a battle to like get some affection from the partner, and that leads, and that's just a repetition, is what I've noticed. Is just a repetition of patterns that I developed as a kid, which is like I did not have my mom was not a very affectionate person. Doesn't mean she didn't care, doesn't mean she was like intentional in that, but because of her own lack of love that she didn't receive from her mom, right? she didn't have an affectionate mother, so therefore she did not learn how to be an affectionate mother, and therefore I didn't have an affectionate mother, and so then I look for partners that aren't affectionate either. Yeah. And you don't do it intentionally, but those are the type of partners you attract because you haven't figured out how to do that for yourself. And I think like that was I guess that's another reason too why we were so close, is because a lot of us had similar battles going on internally.
Yeah.
And we all could, like, we were a family that chose each other. Obviously we grew up and we were born into families, but this was a family we all chose. And I think that had, to me, that was more impactful in that you guys truly didn't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like, your siblings you're born with, like you have those siblings and you don't really choose each other, at least as far as I know.
Yeah.
But you don't choose each other. And in this family, we did. And we still choose each other. So I never will stop talking about this group of Marines is you guys, like, there's no reason why you guys should still be, you have no responsibility to talk to us anymore. And everybody still finds some level of connection and that sense of family still.
Yeah.
That I don't know that we can find anywhere else. So, I think getting close to the end of our time here, I do want to ask you a few questions.
What's up?
I ask this for every guest. What is it that you got going on in your life right now that you'd like to share before we check out?
Yeah, man. Right now, just in life, it's gonna sound boring, but like honestly, I've kind of just like learning how to get into a routine. And it's as crazy as that sounds, and I know it sounds boring, but like honestly, like one of the few healthy things that I think I've learned as an adult is like learning how to get into a routine and like learning how to like take care of yourself, making sure that like you're good and you're fulfilled and you're satisfied is something that like has been on my agenda and something that I've been working on. Like I've been choosing my career and making sure that I'm like actively being like, you know, doing my best at that and making sure like I'm progressing the way I want to. So yeah, honestly, like one of the few things that I got going right now is like I'm choosing myself. I'm actively going ahead and traveling a ton. So like making sure that I'm like, you know, trying to take advantage of life. And then also just focusing on like building relationships and like maintaining those relationships that I have in my life as well. Cause I'm horrible at texting. Like we're in the group chat and like a lot of times like I'll look into it and I'll have to like read back a few things because I haven't gotten a chance to check it. So like maintaining the relationships and like rebuilding some of them as well. And yeah, just honestly maintaining and rebuilding relationships and like honestly like yeah, the things that I have going on now are pretty much just more or less revolving around like honestly making sure that I'm good and exploring the things that I want to explore and kind of really just taking care of that.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing that. I think one of the things we struggle with the most is taking care of us. We look at everybody else. That's something I know I have to work on too. So good stuff, man. And have you discovered purpose? And if not, what do you think it might be? And if you have, what do you think it is?
Discovering purpose. I think like discovering purpose for me, or like my purpose on this earth is to honestly just go ahead and essentially like be just a good force of energy for certain people. Because like honestly, like one of the few lessons that I learned in the military is that like you never know what anyone's going through, and we definitely like going back to the unit, we saw some stuff like that people can go through, and they honestly like there was a lot of times where I felt like our leadership didn't give us that support, and I kind of made it a point where I was like, hey, I don't like that. Like honestly, now one of my purposes in life is pretty much just making sure that like, hey, if I see somebody who's like just going through something, or like honestly just trying to be a good friend, and like if they need a good friend, being that person, or like if someone needs whatever, honestly it really can just be anything, but honestly my purpose now is just going ahead and being that good source of energy and trying to make sure that I'm like putting effort into those things and making sure that like, hey, the people around me are good, and that brings me joy.
Well, you know, like a little to touch on that just a little bit, the like presence, if you didn't have presence, like emotional presence, physical presence of like your caretaker, because I know that for me, I didn't really, after my parents split, I didn't see my mom much, and you know she was working 2 jobs and trying to keep food on the table, so there was that, but also that had a negative impact, right? Like I did not have somebody present for me, and I think that purpose, like for me, like purpose has been what has been the thing that has been missing in my life, and I try to give that, like I try to put that in the world.
Yeah.
And so so it just makes sense to me that that's something that you want to do, is just be present. Like whatever you didn't get, give that.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. I love that. But also, last question I have for you is, if you could speak to your childhood self, what would you say?
Man, if I could speak to my childhood self, it's, dude, just be yourself. Like I do, there's like, it feels like I went through like a whole thing where like I felt like I don't even recognize the person I was like 5 or 6 years ago. And because like honestly, like I did so much to try to make sure that the people around me were good, and like, or I try to make sure that like I was this perfect person for so many people. I would tell him like younger Armando to be like, yo, just be yourself, man. Like you'll attract who you want to attract, and like as long as you bring yourself, or you come as authentically as you can, you'll attract the good people. You'll attract the people that you want in your life. And learning to be myself, and like that, like going through that whole journey is, I think, like honestly something I wish I had learned at a younger age, because I felt like I would have maybe like done a lot of things differently. But yeah, being yourself is what I would exactly tell younger Armando, is like, be yourself, man. Like don't let anyone influence you. Like do the shit that you want to do.
Glad to have you on, man. That you made time for this, and that, well, I'm gonna have you back on is just something that I tell everybody, because that's my goal, is I want to have you guys be a part of the community and stay around. So hopefully I get to have you on at least once a year. That'd be nice.
Yeah. No,
so
happy to come on anytime.